When Queen Victoria came to the throne in 1837, the Industrial Revolution was well underway. It was based on the nation's huge reserves of coal and iron ore. From coal came coke, a material used to smelt iron ore to produce iron. It would be used to create the world's first iron bridge in 1779, which still stands over the River Severn in Shropshire. The Iron Bridge marked a new era. By 1875, Britain had conquered iron and was producing nearly half the world's output. The Victorians would need a new generation of bridges to take road and rail where they'd never been before.
Some of the greatest engineers who've ever lived used iron to create the modern world. Telford, Stephenson, Brunel, always pushing at the boundaries of the possible. And nowhere more so than in this spectacular symbol of Victorian ambition and ingenuity. The Clifton Suspension Bridge.
Spanning the Avon Gorge in Bristol, the epic Clifton Suspension Bridge stretches over 400 metres. When it was built, it was the highest bridge in Britain. Riding high on the nation's iron boom, this beauty is the creation of the engineering legend Isembard Kingdom Brunel. Civil engineer Dr. Bill Harvey is a world expert on bridges who knows the remarkable story behind this amazing structure.
It's a wonderful bridge, but why ever did they build it here?
Well, because the rich people who had townhouses in Clifton wanted to get across the gorge. And it's a long way down and a long way back up the other side.
But it's a huge project.
It is a massive project.
Just so as the rich people of Clifton could cross the river and walk in the woods.
They were really quite rich.
Bristol had grown rich on the back of the slave trade. Local merchants had shipped more than 500,000 African slaves before the Emancipation Act freed them in 1833. When it abolished slavery, the government gave Bristol slave owners £500,000 in compensation, around 25 million today. The rich wanted their bridge, but the vast expanse of the Avon Gorge presented Brunel with a problem. A traditional stone arch bridge would be simply too heavy. Brunel's solution was a suspension bridge, which would be lighter and stronger than any other type of bridge over that distance. Nothing on this scale had ever been built before. But the young Brunel wasn't afraid of risk. Brunel's bosses were concerned that even a suspension bridge would collapse over such a huge distance. He'd have to shorten the gap between the towers by moving them towards each other. His solution was a piece of engineering cleverness that still stands today. A massive brick foundation for the Lee Woods Tower, built in front of the cliff.
He made the gap as narrow as he could, and that's a big piece of work.
In 1831, work finally began on the 26-metre towers that would hold the bridge up. One perched proudly on its new foundation. But trouble lay round the corner. In October that year, the Bristol riots exploded onto the streets. In a city divided, the wealthy had the vote and the poor wanted change. The riots raged for 3 days. Angry mobs destroyed the jail and the bishop's palace. At least 12 people were killed and more than 80 injured. By the time the riots died down, investors had lost confidence in Bristol, and the future of Brunel's bridge hung in the balance.
For a long time, the bridge wasn't built at all. There was 2 pillars just standing there.
That's right, and the engineers saw it as a monument to failure.
Ever the opportunist, Brunel turned the disaster to his advantage by creating a thrilling ride across the gorge.
They built a temporary cable bridge from a whole strip of iron bars welded together and pulled across the river. And they had a little basket underneath it with a pulley and a rope to pull people backwards and forwards on. quite an exciting ride, I would think.
The contraption, which Brunel called the Suspended Traveller, was originally used to get builders across the gorge. The public were nervous at the thought of taking a ride in what was effectively an early cable car. So the man himself volunteered to be first across. A rather dangerous ride, wouldn't it be?
It got stuck once or twice.
What, people hanging off a basket in the middle there?
Yeah, and when it happened to Brunel, he clambered up and freed the pulley and they pulled him back. But what happened to other people, I don't really know.
The basket ride became a popular tourist attraction, with passengers paying $1 to wobble their way across the Avon Gorge. It raised around £164, or £10,000 today, towards the bridge. But it was nowhere near enough to get it built. Such a spectacular place, isn't it? For over a century, people thought they knew everything there was to know about Brunel's so-called first love. But nearly 140 years after this icon of engineering was built, and through here, routine maintenance unearthed Brunel's engineering secrets. Go on, Bill, after you. Deep in the enormous foundations beneath the Lee Woods Tower.
And then if you come through here,
God, look at this. It's like a cathedral, isn't it?
It is
I mean, it's
like-
that kind of shape.
yep.
What? Those are kind of very, very thin stalactites, aren't they?
Yeah, they're about pencil thickness and just a thin skin of stone.
It's an eerie place, though, isn't it?
It's an eerie place, yeah.
But the amazing thing is, nobody knew this space existed.
No,
How many of these vaults are there?
12.
12. This is the biggest, is it?
This is the biggest.
How was it discovered that this was actually hollow?
By resurfacing on the footpath upstairs, there was a manhole which had been paved over, and when they lifted it, they found the way in.
Just completely by accident?
It's completely by accident.
Extraordinary. Why did Brunel build it, alarmingly to me, hollow? Common sense tells you it's got to be much less solid and strong than something that's been packed.
If this was all solid, then the towers would be standing on the stone, whereas built like this, the towers are standing on the skin, so they're okay.
Solid walls or skins provide a firm foundation. These walls are up to 13 metres thick in places, so they're not going anywhere. Brunel knew that hollow foundations can be safer than solid ones, as they reduce the overall weight of the entire structure bearing down. So you're actually saying that it's stronger being hollow than it would be if it was solid?
If it was solid, yes.
That rather defies common sense. doesn't it?
It does. But that's what engineering is. It's defying common sense all too often.
If Brunel defied common sense, it was only when he'd calculated that he could. Brunel didn't have the benefits of modern-day computers to rely on. Instead, he used his brilliantly mathematical mind.
He was one of the first really calculating civil engineers. So yes, he did do the sums. He didn't just put his finger in his ear and say, build it. He did work out what the tension was going to be and how much the cables would sag, how much they would move. And he was certainly clever enough to work that out, which isn't trivial calculations.
Sadly, Brunel would die before his bridge could be built. But thanks to the enduring brilliance of his calculations, Victorian innovators William Barlow and John Hawkshaw could continue Brunel's legacy. They promised to complete the Clifton Suspension Bridge as a memorial to Brunel.
The fact that Barlow and Hawkshaw took it on at the end and finished it, and they were two real towers of late Victorian engineering, clearly meant that to them it was something very special.
What does it tell us about the Victorians?
Just that they were brave. To me, yeah, we can do this. Let's make it happen.
When Brunel's bridge finally opened in 1864, it was the longest single-span chain bridge in Victoria's empire. For the Clifton elites, it was the ultimate symbol of status and power.